Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about automating threat hunting on the dark web and the things that surrounds it. Let me close my webcam so that you can focus on the slides. So a little about me. My name is Apur Singh Gautam. I'm a security researcher. I started into threat intel 2 years back. Currently, I'm doing my master's in cybersecurity from Georgia Tech. This summer, I was a research intern at XCU Berkeley doing research in threat intelligence towards dark website. I love contributing to the security community. I've been contributing as a senior TA at Cybrary and also at StationX, and I do contribute to local security meetup groups also. I I pretty much play Rainbow Six Siege every day. I really love that game, and I do stream sometimes. I do hiking, and I recently started into lockpicking, and I've been liking it so far. Today we will talk about what dark web is, how you access dark web. We will bust some of the myths surrounding dark web. Then we will talk about what do you mean by threat hunting on the dark web. Why is it important? What can you gain from it, and what can you lose from it if you don't do threat hunting on the dark web or if you don't do dark web monitoring. We'll discuss few methods. We'll discuss tool-based methods of how, what tools can you use and how you can use it to hunt on the dark web, and we will discuss a human element or how you can use humans to get what you want from the dark web. Then we will discuss what how you can automate this tool-based system, because obviously you would want to automate the data collection from the dark web. So we'll discuss one example of how you can automate it, and then we will discuss the overall picture of how what goes like how you, in an organization, how you can start with all this. So right starting from your your requirement specification till your collection of data analysis, and then creating reports, etc. And then we will discuss a little about operation security and how you can employ it in your daily life. So let's start with introduction to dark web. I am sure you must have seen this image a lot of time on the internet. So basically, there are three parts to web. That's surface web, deep web, and the dark web. Surface web are the sites that are indexed by search engines. So it includes Google, Bing, etc. And the search engines include Google, Bing, etc. And these are all the sites that you can directly go on Google and search and get it. Deep web, coming to deep web, these are all the sites that are behind some kind of login system, or you can so the you cannot directly search these on the dark on the search engines. You can some of the examples include your college database, where you can go and see your results after logging in, or your server that is anywhere on Google, AWS, DigitalOcean, etc. Now coming to the dark web, which we will talk today mostly. So dark web is it is the part of the web that you require some special software to access, uh, and the sites that are on the dark web, these are all forum-based sites, forums or marketplaces where people sell and trades different kinds of things. That we will talk about what things are sold on the dark web or traded. So moving deeper into the dark web, so there are different organizations that offer their dark web systems. So some of them include Tor, I2P, ZeroNet, Freenet, etc. We will specifically talk about Tor because that's the popular one and majority of the people use Tor. The basic idea behind Tor is it's a decentralized system. So it's like a proxy based system. So your traffic goes through several proxies or several nodes, or we call it relays also, and then reach the destination, and it gives some form of anonymization. I would not say complete anonymization, because there are some problems and security vulnerabilities in Tor also. So it gives some kind of anonymization, and that's why it is so popular, because it is very hard, it's really hard to determine who is accessing what and where the traffic is coming from, where the traffic is going. Also, so as you can see in the image, I'm sure you must have seen this similar kind of URL. So it's basically alphanumeric string, and it is specifically for Tor. It's either 16 character or 56 character, and I think it depends on the cryptographic algorithm used behind it. So 16 character is v2 based address, and 56 character is v3 based address, and there are different cryptographic algorithms behind it. uh, Moving on. So let's discuss what are different misconceptions about dark web or Tor. The first is people think it is really big. The dark web is really big. There are a lot of sites on the dark web. So the thing is, yes, there are a lot of sites on the dark web, but if you compare it to the clear web sites and the availability, so clear websites or surface websites, they are available 24 by 7, but dark websites, .onion sites, they are not available all the time. uh, there are only few domains that are available most of the time, but majority of them are not available. So that's why if you think of the availability concept, then it's a really a small part of the web. Another thing is, whenever you talk to someone about dark web, they think the first thing that comes into their mind is it's the place for cyber criminals, and criminals hang out there. So the thing is, yes, cyber criminals are there on the dark web, but it is also place for good people, people like journalists or activists or whistleblowers, who go on the dark web, and they can easily circumvent surveillance and talk whatever they want, or publish whatever they want. That's why there are many sites like Facebook and My Times who have their dark web counterparts on the as a .onion domain, where people can go and do the things that they would do on the surface web, but in a safe manner, in an anonymous manner. The third thing is, people think that it's illegal to access dark web, but that's not the case. It's completely legal to access dark web. Obviously, your ISP might have blocked, some of the ISPs might have blocked Tor nodes, but you can circumvent is it using some kind of proxy or VPN, and it's completely legal to access the dark web unless you indulge into certain activities like selling or taking drugs, etc., or taking part in some kind of illicit activities. So doing research on the dark web, so you basically there are different types of forums on the dark web. So a researcher, according to their business model, according to their business requirements, they focus on certain types of forums or marketplaces. So either you can focus on general forums or general markets, or credit card forums, or dumb shops that we call, or electronic wallet forums, insider threat forums. So there are different types of forums. So just an example, if you are a bank, then you would want to focus on credit card forums or dumb shops, where different credit cards are being dumped. So in this way, it depends on your threat model, what you want to focus on, and then you start your research accordingly. These are some of the site examples that are there on the dark web. I just took this from a dark web wiki page. There are a lot more other sites also, and these are some of the products that are being sold on the dark web. So as you can see, it is really easy to get these products if you have that kind of money. So you can get a credit card with some amount loaded at $20, or you can get SSN at $1, or some kind of bank details at $1,000. So it is really easy to get all these things if you are on the dark web. And I'm sure you must have seen several news about Zoom accounts being sold on the dark web, or different every user profiles being sold on the dark web. So these kind of things are being sold by actors, and people do buy this. So just to let you know that if you do research, then you can get to know about these things. If your organization is breached and someone is selling data on the dark web, then you can know if who is selling the data, and when someone is selling the data. So this is an example of how it looks on different forums. So these are types of listings people do make, or users make on the dark web forums or marketplaces. This is just an example of how much it costs for one account that is being sold on different on different types of services. So as you can see, bank and financial, they rank higher. So it takes its average $70 cost for one account of some banking system. On the similar lines, these are the average cost of brute forcing tools. So this is just one example. This is just one snippet from Digital Shadows white paper. There are different other organizations that release their white papers and blogs and their threat reports, where you can see all these things written or in a graph. So coming to the part of what do you mean by hunting, why you should hunt on the dark web, what are you gaining, what are you losing if you're not hunting on the dark web. So let's start with what is threat hunting. So it's basically proactively searching for threats. The meaning of proactive is you're searching for threats before it even happens. It's basically looking through logs, looking through indicators of compromise, looking through text-based data that we do mostly when we are dealing with data from the dark web, because it's mostly text-based data. And because of this text-based data, we use different analytics or machine learning or natural language processing algorithms to get the data that we want, or to refine the data that we want from these text-based data. And most of the time you don't know what you're looking for, so there's nothing concrete about this threat hunting, and that's why it's most of the time hypothesis based. So you take one use case, you work on them, and then once you are done, you take another use case and go on. So it basically, in a iterative manner, you go on and go on, and it never stops. This process never stops. So why is it important to hunt on the dark web? Basically, I already told you there are different forums, marketplaces, dumb shops on the dark web. These different actors or different users go on these dark web. They interact with each other. They talk about new attacks. They talk about selling different exploits. They trade their exploits. They communicate with each other and talk about attacking new organizations. They talk about new TTPs, that's tactics, techniques, and procedures. And if you're doing research on the dark web correctly, if you're getting that correct, if you're getting the data correctly, then you can identify these things. You can identify the attack TTPs. You can identify the actors that are talking about these. You can identify in which forum these things are going on, in which forum your organization is being talked about. So it can you can leverage all these things to reduce risk of your organization. And the another thing that I would like to talk about is you can reduce the impacts. So for example, your organization is breached, and some actor is selling data on the dark web, because dark web is the first place actors sell the data, and then after that it comes to the clear web. So if you identify the selling of data beforehand, then you can reduce some of the indirect impacts like reputation loss or legal penalties that comes with it, and you can think about mitigating those risks. And it will help your organization planning what further steps you need to take beforehand. These are some of the examples that will show you why you should research on the dark web, and if not, what are you losing. So this is one example of an actor selling an RCE of an Australian bank. These are all the examples from the recent 3 to 4 months before. So this another example. This is a Pastebin like site where an actor is talking about vulnerability in a US based health organization. And this is another example of a Russian forum where an actor is selling RDP credential for a US based hospital. So as you can see, these are there are different. I mean, if you're not researching on the dark web correctly, or if you are so you are losing on these things. So if you know, if suppose you are a hospital and you saw this actor selling RDP credential for your hospital, so you can go talk to your team and figure out if you have some RDP vulnerability or not. So it will help you identify these kind of threats. If you do it correctly, it can help you. If you do dark web monitoring or dark web research correctly, it can help you keep up with the latest TTPs that actor are talking about. And even it can prepare your SOX or IR team to deal with that attack if it happens, and obviously it reduce the risk to your organization. So moving to methods, what tools? So we'll talk about tool-based methods and human-based part. So what tools you can use to hunt on the dark web. So these are just an example of tools that you can use to get data from the dark web. There are a lot more tools. So starting with Scrapy. Scrapy is a web crawling framework which has multi-threading capability, and I'm emphasizing on Scrapy because it's really useful tool while you're hunting on the dark web because of that multi-threading capability built in, so you don't have to write code additionally for that. Second is Tor. Obviously, if you are accessing dark web, you need Tor. Onion Scan is another great tool which you can use to scan different Onion websites and look for correlations between different sites and see if a site is up or not. Coming to Privoxy, so basically you would want to access Tor on some SOCKS proxy or VPN just for that added layer of protection. And also, if your ISP is blocking Tor nodes, then you would want to access it on some kind of proxy. So there are different tools that you can use to route your traffic of Tor through SOCKS proxy. And some of the tools are Privoxy, TSOCKS, Polypo, etc. I've been using Privoxy. You can use any other tool. Just use some tool to route your traffic through SOCKS. Then we come to Elastic. So obviously you have to use some kind of database to keep your data, and Elastic is the best thing because of that Kibana support. You can search through that data easily. Then we have, you can use any other database also and then keep put into Elastic, or you can directly put into Elastic. Redis is in cache database or in memory database that is used for cache purposes. So we'll talk about why we are using Redis here. And there are many other tools, like there are some search engines like Kilos, Recon, or Onion Wiki, Torch, where you can search for different Onion websites. So going a little deep into Scrapy, because as I told you, it's really useful tool. So this is I will talk about how Scrapy works, and I will go one by one of all the steps. So you can just think of every major thing that you see here as a different Python program. So the item pipeline is a Python program, scheduler is a Python program, engine is another Python program, downloader, middleware, and spider. These all 5-6 things are a Python program. So starting with Spider, this is where you will give your Onion website a link, and it will send the request to the engine. The engine is the Python program that is managing every other Python programs or every other component of Scrapy here. So engine gives it to the scheduler, gives your request to the scheduler. What scheduler does is this is the part where your multi-threading comes into the play. So scheduler schedules each request to different threads, and you can manage this thread. I think it starts from 8 to 32 or more now. Then scheduler gives it back to the engine, and engine gives it to the middleware. Now middleware is the part where you will have your proxy code and your login code. So by proxy code, I mean this is the place where you will put your Tor IP or your SOCKS proxy IP and or your Privoxy IP in this case, as we are using Privoxy. And by login code, what I mean is, so majority of the sites on the dark web, the majority of the forums and marketplaces, you need some kind of login access. So you need to register an account or create an account, and then you put your cookies or your login credentials in middleware so that it can go to the site and log in automatically. Another thing to note is you have CAPTCHA. So you need most of the good forums, they use CAPTCHA. So you need some kind of system to bypass those CAPTCHAs. So either you can use Python OCR codes, or you can use some external CAPTCHA solving websites like Death by CAPTCHA or Anti-CAPTCHA, and that code you write into middleware as well. So now your request goes through middleware, it goes to the downloader. Downloader is basically a program that gets the HTML page. Now you got the HTML page and it sends it back to the Spider. Now you have the HTML page, so you don't need the full page, you need some elements from that HTML page. Suppose if you got one HTML page of a forum where some where some user put a post, so you would want only that post and the comments and nothing else. So you get those HTML elements from that and store it into we call in Scrapy, we call items where you store these data, it's kind of a variable. So then the item, it goes to item pipeline, and item pipeline is a program where you have your database code, Elasticsearch code, or you can also simultaneously you can dump data into JSON format or in other format. So this is basically how Scrapy works, and this goes on. Obviously this is a multi-threading system, so this goes on automatically. Everything is done automatically once you start scraping. So that is why this tool is really useful for scraping data from the dark web, or you can use it to scrape data from anywhere, but it's useful in dark web case also. So moving on to the human element part that I was talking about. So basically, human intelligence, it's the process of gathering intelligence through interpersonal contact rather than using any tool-based system or technical process. So by interpersonal contact, I mean you are engaging with the actor, you are talking to the actor by going to the forum or by going to the marketplaces, and if you are doing this correctly, if you have that kind of relationship, then you can figure out a lot of things. For example, you can figure out the intent of why an actor is attacking a particular organization, what new attacks the actors are talking about, what new attack TTPs, what new attack methods they are using, which new exploits they are using. And it's basically, you can think of this as a high-tech equivalent of an FBI agent, of an undercover FBI agent going or spending a lot of time infiltrating a criminal organization. So it takes a lot of time performing human intelligence on the dark web. You have to make that connections, you have to make actors think that you are another actor and not a researcher, and that's why it can be very risky, because you don't want to blow your cover, you don't want to blow your organization name, or you don't want to disclose your real identity, and that is why it is risky. And if done correctly, then it's really valuable to your tool based threat hunting system, because you can figure out new attack vectors, or you can figure out, you can also perform post attack investigation. So what by post attack investigation I mean, if your organization is breached and someone is selling data on the dark web, then you can activate your human intelligence, and you can, if you have that kind of relationship with the actors, you can go and talk to the actors and see if the data they are selling is fake or real, because not every actor is reliable. Most of them, they sell fake data also. So coming to the part of automating this whole tool based threat hunting system, so how you can automate is, I will show you one example of how you can automate this tool based system. There are a lot other examples, there are a lot other methods which you can use to automate this. So let's walk through this automation part. So first of all, you would like to get links and SOX proxy. So you can write a simple script to automate this part, getting links regularly and SOX proxies regularly. Then coming to the Scrapy setup. So what by Scrapy setup I mean, you put all those things in place that you need to start your Scrapy. So this includes going to the website, registering. So obviously there are some manual steps here in Scrapy setup, because every automating everything in Scrapy setup is hard. Like registering account. So on some websites you cannot automate registration of account, or also you need to go through, so you do this for every forum, because HTML architecture of every forum is different, or every marketplace is different. So you need to manually go through those forums and figure out what elements you need. So you do this in Scrapy setup, and you put your captcha bypass code, you put your login code, you put your cookies and everything. You set the parameter of the multi-threading, how many threads you want, and then you start your Scrapy. The crawler, parser, and analyzer, these are all parts of the Scrapy. So basically crawler gets the data, gets your HTML page, parser, you parse the HTML, you get the element, and analyzer is you analyze the HTML data, or you analyze the elements that you got, and then you put it into a Elasticsearch, or you dump it into JSON. So in this case, in what I am showing here is, you first put the data into JSON format, like you dump the data into JSON, and then you perform some kind of analytical or NLP or ML algorithms to filter out the data, or to trim the data to the things that you want, or your organization's requirements, based on your organization's requirements. So for example, if you are a bank, you don't want data related to drugs, or you don't want related to weapons, etc. That is found on different dark web forums or marketplaces. So you only want data based on you only want data relating to dump shops, relating to credit cards being dumped on the dark web. So that thing you need to filter out from these data, because Scrapy, again, it's a multi-threading system, so it gets a lot of data in really less time. So you have a lot of data but which you don't need, so that's why you need to filter out or trim that data, and you use some kind of NLP or ML processing thing, where you train your model. You get some data, you train the model, and then use that model to get the data that you want, and then you put the data into Elasticsearch, and it goes on, the process goes on. Also, the another thing that I was going to talk about is Redis. So why we are using a cache based database here is because again, Scrapy is getting a lot of data in a lot less time. So there might be some duplicate data, and yes, Scrapy has duplicate filters, but if something happens, if your Scrapy crashes in between, if you are starting Scrapy again, then that duplicate filter doesn't matter, because your Scrapy closed. So that's why you use some kind of in-cache database or in-memory database as a cache, so that you can use some unique identifiers and then scrape data accordingly, so you don't get duplicate things. So this is one example of how you can automate the dark web hunting, and all this is done. You can do this either on your system or on a server. I particularly use this on a DigitalOcean server. You can do this anywhere with proper VPN and SOX proxy enabled, so that you don't get blocked. You can change any part of this, so you can directly put data into Elasticsearch and then do an NLP processing, and then rearrange or put again the data in Elasticsearch, or you can directly dump into JSON that I showed you here, and then do processing and then put data into Elasticsearch. So you can tune it accordingly. Now let's talk about the overall picture here. Like we discussed about how you can hunt data on the dark web, but how this whole thing starts, like what you think of when you are starting to hunt on the dark web, or when you are researching on the dark web. So let's talk about threat intelligence lifecycle. So this is basically the steps you take while performing some kind of processing or analysis on some kind of data, and then getting intelligence or results out of it. So starting with direction, this is where you will identify dark web forums, you will acquire access, you will create accounts, and then you, according to your threat model, based on your organization's threat model, you will figure out which forums you want to target. Then collection, you will this is the part where you will start your Scrapy, you will start collecting raw data, you will start getting the raw HTML. The processing part is where you will process those HTML data and then extract topics, authors, posts, comments, etc. from those HTML page. Analysis is the part where I talked about performing different kind of analytical processing, like using ML or NLP to infer relationship between those data that you are getting, linking those data sources, identifying different trends on the dark web, or based on your organization's threat model, you identify different things that you want, or you target different things that you want. And then dissemination, you, like, obviously you put those, you make those reports, or you visualize those things in Kibana if you have that kind of data, or you put those alerts in Kibana to send it, or you send those reports to your managers to have a look at. So going a little deep into this, so what I mean by threat modeling is, or so the first step is you figure out, you do threat modeling of your organization. So what threat modeling means is you basically figure out your assets or critical assets that actors can target. You figure out the products or things that actors are behind in your organization. Also, you so basically you understand what actors want if they will target your organization. So this is what you think of, and then you figure out which forums on the dark web you want to target, and then you choose. So just as an example, you prioritize different risks that you want to focus on, and for example, you can use the pyramid of pain for determining what you want to focus on. Suppose if your organization want to focus on just domain names and getting a host or network artifacts to stop attacks or to reduce risk, or your organization directly want to focus on TTPs from the dark web that you can get. So there are different things that you can focus on, and then accordingly you can choose your sources on the dark web. Moving on, coming to data collection and processing part. So you can collect, you should collect data from both clear web or surface web and the dark web, because if you combine all these data, then you get good intelligence out of it. So just as an example, you can collect data from Pastebin, Twitter, Reddit, and nowadays Telegram, because it has been popular among actors, so they talk on Telegram also. And on the dark web part also, you collect data from different forums and different marketplaces. After collecting your data, you perform analysis. So performing data analysis is using NLP or ML or DL techniques for analyzing those text-based data that you are getting. So you basically perform different kinds of social network analysis, or classification of different forums, or clustering of different products that you find on, or different products or exploits that you find on the dark web. I will talk a little about MITRE ATT&CK. So what MITRE ATT&CK is, it's basically a knowledge base of TTPs that are based on real world observations. So if you are gathering data, and if you have that right amount of data from the dark web where you can see TTPs that you can map to MITRE ATT&CK, then it creates a really good report out of it. You can create a really good report out of it, and it can help your organization figuring out what you want to focus on, or how the TTPs are based, or how the TTPs are being targeted on the dark web. So coming to the operation security part, so I will discuss what do you mean, first of all, what do you mean by OPSEC, then why you should focus on OPSEC, why is it really important to maintain OPSEC on the dark web, and then we will discuss a few steps of how you can follow the OPSEC. So basically, OPSEC is the practice of hiding yourself online by differentiating your real self from your online self. So these are the steps that you take to hide your information that can correlate back to hide the information that can correlate back to you or back to your organization. This can include anything from your name, email, etc., or your organization's name, etc. The thing is, at the end of the day, we are all humans, so we like to be seen knowledgeable in front of others, be it any other actor, and that's why it leads to gossiping, bragging, oversharing, etc. And that is why maintaining OPSEC is really hard, because you have to think a lot about it. You have to think something before posting. You have to think whether this thing will disclose something about you or not. And that is why let's discuss a few steps, a few things that you can keep in mind while maintaining OPSEC. For maintaining OPSEC. So first of all, obviously the system you are using, the server or the lab or the VM you are using to hunt data on the dark web, or to perform dark web monitoring, you should never store any private data on that, or any personal data on that. You should always access store over some kind of SOCKS or VPN, just for that added layer of protection. Again, as I told you before, this is a high-tech equivalent of an undercover FBI agent. So he has some kind of persona. You should have some kind of persona and a backstory for each forum that you are targeting, or for each account that you are making. You should have that kind of, you should think before making that account, you should think of the persona and the backstory that you can relate, that you can talk about to the actors, to maintain that relationship. Again, if you are doing this for a long time, then you should it's necessary to take extensive notes, because after some time, that persona, it keeps it is in your mind, and the last thing you would want is to mix different personas. So that's why you take extensive notes for that. And another thing to note is, so suppose you are accessing Russian forum from USA, so you would want to change time zones just for that added layer of protection, or added layer of the peace of mind, so that the actor doesn't think otherwise. Obviously, yes, there will be Russian people accessing Russian forum from USA, but just to be safe, just so that you don't blow your cover, you should change your time zone. And on the similar note, you might want to develop or learn some appropriate language skills or slang skills. In this case, if you are accessing Russian forum, then you need to learn Russian language, or if you are accessing German forum, accordingly you need to learn German language, etc. So these were some of the steps that you can take to maintain that OPSEC in your lifestyle, and there are a lot other steps also, but these are the starting things that you can follow. So that was it. We discussed about dark web, what do you mean by dark web, how you can access dark web. We discussed a few misconceptions about dark web. We discussed about dark web forums, marketplaces, what do you mean by threat hunting, why you should hunt on the dark web, and what are you gaining and what are you losing. We discussed about tools, specifically Scrapy, and why is it important to hunt on the dark web using Scrapy. We discussed about human intelligence and how it can bolster your tool-based threat hunting if done correctly. We discussed one example of how you can automate this dark web threat hunting, and then we discussed a little about threat intelligence lifecycle and how the overall picture fits, and then we discussed a few steps of how you can follow OPSEC, like how you can follow OPSEC in your daily life. If you liked one thing from this talk, then I would highly suggest you to go back and do follow these steps, like figure out your assets, what you want to focus on, create the hunting pipeline that I talked about, start your Scrapy, start getting your data into Elk, and then search for your company's name or your organization's assets name in Kibana. And if you find it, then try to analyze the results, try to see which forum talked about this, which particular actor talked about this, and then obviously report it to your team, and do this on a monthly basis, and then see if you're getting good results out of it or not. Obviously, dark web threat hunting is hard, but if done correctly, it's worth the effort. Always keep OPSEC in mind. The last thing you would want is to disclose your information on the dark web. Always look at more than one resource. As I told you before, try to include sources from surface web and try to include sources from dark web both, and then you will get good intelligence out of it. And doing all this thing, it takes a lot of time, and you cannot do this alone. If you don't have a specific team in your organization, then I would suggest you to create the team of more than one, and try to use this. And then if you are getting that good result, then you can use MITRE ATT&CK to map the TTPs that you are getting to the MITRE ATT&CK. These are some of the resources that you can look on if you want to know more about dark web monitoring or dark web hunting stuff. These are some of the organizations that release their white papers and blogs regularly, like Recorded Future Insights, Digital Shadows. These are the good organizations that release their white papers on dark web hunting or on different products on the dark web. So that was it. I hope you all like my presentation. If you want to know more about it, or if you want to discuss anything about it, you can hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn. And with that, thank you.